Hi there, this is Kathy with Sycamore and Cotton, and in this week's video I've got some really fun, super cute, high-end, vintage inspired trash to treasure projects. So let's get started. If you're wondering how rusty old saws can become high-end home decor, well, just keep watching. So I have some really good friends who are downsizing some of their things, and they have collected through 50 years of marriage lots of beautiful things, and they've decided to part with some of it. And when they call you up and say, we're downsizing and we'd like to give you some things, are you interested? You get your truck, you get your husband, and you go get whatever they have that they're ready to part with. And these two saws, along with I think 3 others, were part of the many wonderful items that were given to me by these great, good, longtime family friends. In fact, my parents were friends with their parents. So I wasn't sure what to do with these saws. I know a lot of people have them hanging outside their barns and their sheds, but my shed's not really a good place for it, and we don't have a barn. So I've seen several pictures before of people who make saws beautiful. Some hand paint on them. My painting skills are not that great. So I went to Pinterest and found some really good ideas there. And I decided to do this first one using transfers. At first, I did sand the rust off both sides of the blade, and now you see me applying polyacrylic. I do plan on using fusion paint, but I wanted to make sure that I don't have any rusting on this, and I hope at least that the polyacrylic and the fusion together will prevent that. But if this is going to be used in someone's home or a covered porch, then it should be fine regardless. Here I'm applying the second coat of the paint. Now it was a fusion paint, but it is a paint color that I mixed. It was originally Everett, but I mixed some red in with it to make an olive color for another project, and I actually had this left over. And I thought this color would be perfect for this project. So of course, after everything, I always use my hair dryer to speed things along and get things dry faster. I actually have a heat gun somewhere, but I've misplaced it. For the handle, I just decided to brighten it up a little bit using Waverly's antiquing wax, and I just applied it on both sides and then took a shop towel and wiped that back, and I was really pleased with how it came out. I didn't want to detract from the age and the beautiful color of the wood, so this was the perfect step to be able to maintain that. The transfers that I'm using are called Sunflower Farms, and they're from Prima Redesign, and that is all that I had left. I have used this transfer pack so many times. In fact, this is the second time I've purchased it, and it's been really one of my favorites. I love the colors. It says autumn, but it could also be used pretty much around the year. I think it would even be pretty at Christmas. Now, using transfers, or actually what I found working on this saw and the one that I'm going to do next, it's a little bit challenging because the size that you have to work with decreases as you go down the length of the saw, of course. So I had to do some cutting and placing, but it all worked out really well, I think. Just watch. You've probably seen transfers being applied dozens and dozens of times, but in case you haven't, you just apply it by using the tool that I'm using in my hand. Now that's one that actually came with an Iron Orchid Designs transfer. The ones that Prima send, or at least they used to be. It's been a while since I've ordered anything from Prima, but the one that they send is a wooden stick. It kind of looks like a popsicle stick. But these acrylic tools that are sent by IOD. I happen to like them better, but I'll use whichever one I grabbed first usually. But here I am trying to figure out how to bring that design on down to the end of the saw while keeping the flow going, if that makes sense. When you're attaching the transfer, you rub that tool over the top of it while you pull on that clear sheet of paper, and the transfer should be applying to the surface. If you happen to lift the paper and you can still see the transfer, then you need to lay it back down. If you happen to remove the clear paper and you see that there's a piece that maybe had torn and was still on the transfer paper, you can put it back down in the same spot and still apply it. So transfers are really forgiving and easy to use, and if you haven't used them before, I'd suggest trying, because they really amp up your project and just make pretty much anything beautiful. After getting all of the transfers on the way that I wanted them, I then applied a top coat of polyacrylic. And here it is. I really love the way that it turned out. I'm excited to have the other 3 saws to work on. Well, one more after this one. I only do 2 for this video, but I'll get you a better picture at the end. But let's get on to the next one now. I've already sanded the blade and applied the polyacrylic and let that dry. So now I'm painting it, and I've decided for this one it's going to have a black background, and I'm using Waverly paint. This is the color ink. Really, it's such a highly pigmented paint that, or this color in particular is, that it only takes 1 coat. Since this is a chalk paint, and there is some self-leveling with chalk paint, but I wanted to make sure I didn't have brush strokes. The Fusion paint for the first one has self-leveling, so I didn't worry about the brush strokes. So here, to avoid brush strokes, I'm pouncing it on, stippling it on, dabbing it on, whatever you want to call it. And I use a chip brush for that. Then of course I'm drying it. I'm going a different direction from transfers and using air dry clay. For this, I have the sunflower mold here that I have already made the air dry clay castings, and they're not dry. I had just cast them and off camera, and here I'm just kind of cleaning up the edges just a little bit. And then I worked with trying to place them. As you can see here, the saw is only wide enough here at the very top to hold the most of this, and even part of it hangs over. So that's fine. I like it when a design spills over the edge, and being that it was a saw, that made it super easy to cut the edge, although an X-Acto knife would have been just fine as well. And now I'm working the next one, cleaning those edges up as well. These have been sitting for a little bit, and it's much easier to just clean them by pressing your finger against the edge when they're fresh out of the mold. But these had started to dry just a little. Obviously they're still pliable and workable, but it did take a little bit to smooth them out. Now I'm trying to figure out where to place it, because I had thought that I would use a stem, but I wasn't sure exactly how the placement would be, so I just kept playing around with everything, trying to figure out where it would go. I haven't glued anything down yet. But I decided to start gluing now, and I use my Tite Bond Quick and Thick. I had too much on, so I decided to take off the extra and use it on that second one as well, and then I'll go back to the first one. And I'm just pressing down gently, making sure that all of the points and all of the parts are tight against the saw blade. I also have a few of the petals there on the left of the sunflower curled up just a little bit along the wooden handle. I don't know if you can tell in this setting or not, but I wanted to make sure those were pressed in as well and no gaps. And here I'm cleaning out any excess glue using my brush and using a wet wipe. And now I'm contemplating what to do next. I know that I want to add more of the castings, but at this point I decide that maybe I could go ahead and start painting, and then that would give me an idea of what additional castings that I want to use. I got out 2 colors of acrylic paint. I'm using burnt umber and nutmeg. Burnt umber is the darker one, and nutmeg is the lighter color there. And I just kind of put my brush in both of them and start dabbing on for the center of the sunflower. For the petals, I used a milk paint that is by Rust-Oleum, and the color is Venetian yellow. And for the that's that darker color, and then that smaller bottle is a Waverly paint, and it is called Maize. The color is Maize. So I start by using the darker, which is the Venetian yellow, and I'm just brushing along the inside of the petals and bringing it out toward the edge. I'll follow up with the lighter yellow and finish up the tips in it, blending them where they meet. I use the same brush, and so by using the 2 different colors, I'm giving more dimension and more realistic looking. Hopefully, that's my goal, at least, right? It's a little hard on this particular sunflower of being able to identify what's petals and what's green leaves. So I think I end up going back over some of the ones that I've painted yellow and paint them green. Jumping ahead and painting those first 2 flowers did definitely help me decide how to finish up. And so I added a small blossom at the bottom with a tiny bit of stem and a leaf attached to it. And now I'm going back and painting. I am mixing those 2 colors again for the color of the stem, and I'll of course paint the leaf green as I'm doing here. I did use the same green that I used in the first saw, which is the fusion paint that I had mixed a little red with to make a more of an olive shade. I use a lighter shade of green to go through and add some dimension to the green parts. This is Celery by Waverly Paint. And I decided to stop here. It's pretty late and I wanted to get home, and I come in the next morning to see how it had dried. I'm always concerned about was there any cracking, and this had very minimal cracking. They say that when you paint while your clay is still wet, that it helps to minimize the cracking, and I find that to be true. I really only had a crack along the edges of that sunflower from the center part, and I'm pulling out a little bit of air dry clay. Normally I would make a sludge if there's a whole lot where it's lifted around the edges or there's more cracking. I'll make a slurry with a mixture of air dry clay and some water. You just keep adding until you get it stirrable, and I'll brush that into the cracks. But for this tiny piece, I just tore off a little bit of air dry clay, and look how thin there that I made it, and I'm just pressing it down into that crack. And then I just start using different things to kind of press it. I've gotten it in there with my finger. I'm also using the tip of the paintbrush and just pressing it in, pushing it down in there and making it blend into the leaves. I also spritzed a little water in my hand and then put the brush in that to help to smooth out any edges that have occurred from this technique. And then I just go over that area with the paint again. Then I just start working on the details. I start dabbing on and brushing on around the inside of the, it's actually on the brown part, but I'm just dabbing on some of the yellow for the transition from the center part to the buds or to the petals. And I just go back and forth between the different elements, adding a little paint here and there, just wherever I see that I could do a dab of paint and bring a little bit more detail. Here I'm actually taking some black paint and just making very light speckles on the inside part, the brown part of the sunflower, and just giving it more dimension and texture. Also filling in black around the edges, cleaning up anywhere that I had gotten the other colors of paint on the black. Here I am dry brushing some of the lighter brown along the inside of the petals, just pulling it out toward the ends, again giving more dimension and texture. And one thing, if you're thinking, oh, this is a lot of painting and there's too much detail, you know what? You don't have to do all of this, because the step that I'm going to be finishing up with is applying a dark wax. It's going to cover anything that you think are imperfections in your paint, and it's also going to add dimension. So if you want to just do the basic colors without the extra detail that I'm adding to it, you can certainly do that, and it's going to look just as beautiful. When all of that paint had dried, I then pull out my clear wax by Waverly, and I apply it all over the saw blade as well as the castings. And I'm doing that because I'm going to come back in with Waverly's antiquing wax, and I'll be putting it all over those flowers. And I want to make sure that I'm able to pull back as much of that dark wax or antiquing wax as I need to get the look that I want to achieve. And so here we go with the first coat, actually the only coat of the antiquing wax by Waverly. And you can see it's quite darker, quite a whole lot darker. But after I pulled out all the excess, wiped it off using a shop towel, and then pulling more of it out with a dry brush that helps to get it out of some of the places where it has puddled. I am putting it over the handle, and as I did with the first one. And here I'm using a wet wipe to get any of the extra off. And it really also helps to remove some of it from the flowers so that I can brighten up those petals where I want to. And I'll tell you, I just love how this turned out. I'm so happy with it. That dark wax stays down in the details of the castings, and it just really adds the perfect dimension and the perfect finish to this piece. And here it is along with the first one, and I could not be more happy with how both of these turned out. They both have their own vibe. The clay definitely took a little more time and a little bit more technique, but the one with transfers was super easy, and I'm really happy with these. But you let me know what you think. Next project is a makeover of these two wooden boxes, and they are actually a makeover from when I first thrifted them, but they had set the way that you see them now with the toile and the gray paint in my booth for probably 2 years. Now at one point they got moved to the top of a cabinet, and I doubt that anybody could get a good look at them from there. But if anybody had really been interested, they would have asked for us to get them down, and no one did. So it was time to move those out. And I really did not want to cover up the toile. That's an IOD transfer, and I wanted to keep that. I love toile, and I know that others do as well. And as I was taking it out of my booth, I told the clerk who was working, these are from my booth, I'm taking them home to do something over. And he said, oh, are you going to make them brighter? And I really didn't know what I was going to do. But when he said brighter, I thought, maybe that's what I'll do, and I'll use this kind of mustard color paint, which is actually the Venetian yellow again. And I decided to start on one of them and just see what I thought. And to be honest, I wasn't sure about it the whole time I was working on it, which if you've watched me any at all, you know that I usually feel that way about many of my projects. But his idea, he really sparked the idea that I needed to move forward with this. It did need something to brighten it up. That gray, although it matched the gray of the toile, it just didn't make the toile stand out. And so going with this brighter color, the Venetian yellow, which is it's a Rust-Oleum milk paint. I got it on clearance from Lowe's, I think, a few years ago, maybe like 3 years ago. I've used it, or maybe 2 years. I've used it in several projects, and I absolutely love it. And I have a piece of furniture that I'm hoping to do in it. It looks the way it does now, it's kind of bright, but when you put a brown glaze over it or a dark oil wax, it really takes on a different dimension. So what I'm doing right now is stippling on the top coat. I did not want any brush marks or any brush strokes showing up, so I am stippling on, and this took probably, I'm pretty certain it took 4 solid coats of this kind of stippling, because you're not getting 100% coverage each time that you're stippling anyway, and it goes fast, so it's fine, but it did take 4 coats. And next I'm using Sweet Pickins dark oil wax. I love this stuff. I did forget to shake it though, so it came out oily on the first dab that I poured out. But this stuff goes such a long way. I've got that small bottle. I've used it on so many projects. My friend Bailey over at Reclaimed Grace, she sells this, so if you're interested in using it, I can hook you up with her. I'll actually leave her information in the description here, and she'll take good care of you. But I had seen her using it on her show, and she really liked it a lot. And once I got it and started using it, I absolutely understand why. First of all, it doesn't leave such a dark finish as some of the others do. Like, I didn't have to put on a clear wax before using this because it's not going to leave it so dark. So that's one reason that I love it. And if you want it darker than what I'm making these two boxes, you can always go back and add additional layers. And I wiped off quite a lot of it. So you can get a darker effect using it. I decided, since I'm aging it up a little bit with the antiquing wax or the oil wax, that I would also try to do something with the knobs. They are cute little ceramic white knobs, and you can see the screw that holds it in place is painted black. So I decided to take those knobs and paint them or cover them with Pent Art's crackling medium. And this is the crackling classic crackle. It makes a much smaller crackle in comparison to Pent Art's fine line crackle. But being that it was such a small space, I decided, or a small area, I decided to use the classic. Anyway, it is a two-step process, and between each step I dry it, and I just put it on a screwdriver to hold it in place while I painted it and dried it. Somehow I missed recording the part where I apply the Sweet Pickins oil wax to it. But anyway, I don't know that it made that much of a difference really, because there are some fine line crackles, but you don't see them that much. But anyway, I'm now putting the knobs back on, and here they are. I am really happy with how they turned out. I think it made such a difference. The toile stands out better, and they just look more upscale. And I am so grateful to my friend Jonathan, who suggested making them brighter, because otherwise I might not have. I'm really interested in knowing what you think about them, so please leave a comment. This next project is also a redo of something that I have done, but this has been more recent. In fact, it was just a few weeks ago when I painted this rolling pin and applied the transfers. But then, once I had the transfers on, I then used sandpaper to kind of distress it just a little, or at least that's what I was hoping. And I guess I grabbed a sandpaper that had a lower grit on it, and it was more coarse, because it ended up leaving some pretty heavy scratches in the transfer. And I looked at it every way that I possibly could, and there was no way to get around just painting over those transfers. And that breaks my heart when I lose transfers. But it is what it is. I have decided to paint over it with a coat of plaster. That is a different paint that I had used in the beginning, but I like this better, so that's what we're going with. It took 2 coats to cover the transfers. And I left the handles the same, because that was my whole idea when I started making this transfer over, was the white center with the green handles. They are painted with Apothecary by DIY, and I had put I think it was the Sweet Pickins wax over them, so it kind of dulls them down a little. That paint is not as bright. So here I'm going with the second coat. And when it's dry, I'm ready for the transfers, which I didn't have as many to choose from this time, because I used several on the first go round with this rolling pin. But I did know that I wanted to have florals and a bird. So I pulled out these 2. I think they go well together. They're from, I can't remember if they're from the same pack or not. I know this one that I'm working on right now is from IOD's Katharina. I think the other is as well. But again, when you're applying a transfer, you just pull off the backing on it, lay it down once you have decided exactly where you want it to go, because it will stick, and if you decide you want to move it, it will very likely ruin your transfer if you try to move it. And just rubbing with that tool, I lift as I rub, and once it's applied, then you need to burnish it. You can use either the paper that it was backed with or the carrier sheet. You can also use your hands. Just rub it very gently, because the purpose of burnishing is to make sure that you've got all of the edges secured and that it won't pull back up on you. After getting those 2 transfers on there, I kept looking at it thinking it needs a little more. And the reason for that is I just felt like there needed to be some wispiness to it. And so I pulled out another transfer pack. This is not the same one that the original 2 came from, but IOD transfers usually can go together. You can usually find parts in one that will match the other. And what I did was pull out some fireflies, some butterflies, and that wispy little floral there, just to kind of extend the design just a little bit more. Rolling pins are a little bit hard to do when you're trying to do an image like this, but I think it turned out just fine. And here I'm using that Sweet Pickins dark oil wax again, and this project is finished. This next project is a set of bookends, and I've already made over one of them, and it's sat here on my table for about 2 weeks. I wasn't sure if I liked it or not, but I decided to go ahead with the second one and give it the same finish that I'd given the first one. When I thrifted these, they were off-white with some brown spots on them that made them look like they were distressed, but they clearly were mass manufactured, and so I'm hoping that I give it a more unique distressed look. So I am painting everything in well, I'm painting the fleur-de-lis in this color plaster, but I'm not getting 100% coverage because I do want there to be spaces where there's cracking, spaces where there's chipping, and I'm leaving places blank like that intentionally. Then I decided to do the whole thing in the plaster. And the reason for that is if you see the mate to this bookend there to the left, the base of it is painted green. That's the olive green paint that I've been using throughout this video. I mixed it specifically for this project. Well, there's some crackling in that olive green paint that shows a white underneath. And so that just happened on its own. I didn't put anything on that to make it happen, but I thought, well, I did like it, so let me try to get that same effect with this one. So I painted the whole thing in the plaster. Again, it's not perfect, it's not meant to be, and when I look at it right now as I'm rewatching this, that's kind of what these looked like when I started them. But I'm trying to get this effect here and trying to remember the steps that I took to achieve that on the first one, because as I said, it's been about 2 weeks and I'm not 100% certain what I did to achieve that look. So I did want to get a crackle on the base of the candle holder, just like the first one. So I did put down a layer of Mod Podge crackling medium. You just put that down, let it dry, and then paint it, and it usually crackles. Well, guess what? Mine didn't. So I'm not sure what happened. I don't know why it crackled when I tried not to. I wasn't intending to crackle on the first one, and then this one I was trying to crackle and I didn't get that. So it works out fine regardless, but this is just an example that things don't always go the way you think they will or the way that you hope they will. That's all dry, so I pulled out that paint that I had mixed, the olive green. I really do like that color. So if you're ever wanting to make olive green, just start with a darker green, add you some red paint. I did not use measurements. And there I'm just touching up some of the places with the white. I must have deleted the part of the film where I was painting some of the details of the fleur-de-lis, the parts that are the little round sections, little round balls. I painted those with gold leaf paint and liquid gold, and I was using that white to clean up some of those edges. Now here I'm taking that same green and just going around places on the fleur-de-lis just to make it look like there's been some chipping. I could have used milk paint for this, but I did not want to risk the fact that I might not get chipping with milk paint. Since I didn't get any crackling with the second base that I just did, I went back and painted over the crackling on the first one, so that I wouldn't have one that was crackled and one that wasn't. I don't know if that was necessary or not, but I did it. So now I'm back to the second one, and here I'm applying PintArt's Classic Crackle. I do want the smaller crackle. I'm only putting it on the fleur-de-lis. Now I could have used a crackle medium on the base of these two bookends, but I thought it turned out okay. The way it is, I just didn't want to fool with it after I had already gone through what I had. After letting step 1 and step 2 dry, along with me giving it some help with my hair dryer, I then get out my Waverly antiquing wax again and start applying it. To be honest, I couldn't remember if I used this Waverly antiquing wax or if I had used the Sweet Pickins dark oil wax on the original, but I went with this. It was a little bit darker, so I'm thinking maybe I had used the Sweet Pickins, but you know what? It's no big deal. I can take this over the first one and make them more of the same. But I don't think I end up having to do that, actually. I can't remember right now. It's amazing what I forget about a project from just a few days apart when I do the work and then when I sit down to edit and put together the video. I wipe off as much as I can using my rag to get in the crevices, even using, I think I pull out a paintbrush or something to help me stick a rag into the tight parts to be able to get what's still hanging around of that dark wax behind that fleur-de-lis. And then once I got it wiped back as much as I could, there were some places where I wanted a little bit more white showing. So I just went back and forth until I achieved the look that I wanted. I hope that by watching this and listening to me that you're able to get the gist of what I did. Yeah, I did put more of the dark wax on the first one. I pulled out my rub and buff and then just started applying it very liberally all over the fleur-de-lis. I haven't decided yet if I'm going to put any on the base itself. I don't think I will. I think it's going to be just on the fleur-de-lis, but I put it on pretty heavily along the edges, and that really helps a lot to blend those spaces together where I've got the green and the white paint to appear as chipping. It also helps to age it while also dressing it up. If you've watched me before, you know that I love rub and buff. It is in a similar way with transfers. It really helps amp up a project's overall look. And I keep going back here and there with the green, with the gold, with the oil wax, or the Waverly antiquing wax, just back and forth until I get the two of them not exactly alike, because that would be impossible. Plus, they would not age exactly the same. So I just didn't want anything making a stark contrast between the two. And I do like these. The more I look at them, the more I like them. But of course, I want to know what you think. Do you like them? And would you have done a finish like this? And maybe if you have an idea for a different kind of finish for these. So that's the end of this video, friends, and I am so grateful to you for spending this time with me. If this is the first time that you've visited my channel, I really hope that you found something useful and that you'll come back and visit some more. and I appreciate that you spent this time with me. And as always, those of you who are returning viewers and friends, I'm so grateful for you as well, and look forward to hopefully seeing you in the next video too. So please don't forget to leave a comment if you liked this. Please like and subscribe as well. Those three things really help a creator to grow their business, and it's certainly something that we appreciate, and it's something that you can do quickly and easily. So I do get back to all the comments. I sometimes a little faster than others, but I always try to get back to all comments, and I really do enjoy talking to all of you all. And if you haven't found me yet on my other social medias, then I'll have links to those in the description, and hopefully I'll see you there as well. And until then, I'll see you next time. Thanks.